in organizing this. I was very pleased when Peter contacted me about being the first speaker. I'd been planning to have a town hall for you as students this week anyway, and so when Peter asked me to be the lead-off speaker for this program, it was perfect timing. I do think this is a very important series for you, and having organized this around the COVID pandemic, it's great. It's not only important, I think, for you as students and understanding how this crisis impacts you personally, but I think also as a healthcare professionals for understanding epidemiology and spread of disease and how these things impact society and the patient care implications of all of this. It's clearly a good educational and learning experience for all of us. And while I think this crisis is, obviously of epidemic proportions or epic proportions, and it's devastating in terms of its consequences, I do think it holds opportunities for us, opportunities to learn and to change. And I think it will change a lot of things throughout our society, including healthcare and higher education. To be part of that, I think there are some opportunities and some positives that will come out of this. But I understand that it's also very difficult, and I want to start by just telling you that every member of the faculty and the staff in this college and across the university is very sympathetic to how this is impacting you, the stress, the complications of the situation that it places on you as students. And obviously, we would never wish a situation like this on any of us. But since we can't change that, we'll do our best to work through it. We'll work together. And I know that we'll come out on the other side stronger than we ever were. So before I answer, I know there was a number of questions submitted or suggested for me to answer. I thought I'd just kind of go through and give you some updates and information on how the college and the university overall have reacted to this situation. There are some other folks on the line who are going to help me out. Tom Tenhove, Dr. Tenhove, Dr. Sheila Allen, and Dr. Kristen Goliak, I know are on the line and will correct me if I say anything wrong, and I might call on them at times to clarify a few things, because I'm sure that you want as much clarity as possible. And then I know there's a few other faculty and members of the leadership team in the college that are also on the line, and so if needed, they'll be available to answer questions as well. So let me just start by saying that I would urge you to keep as updated as you can on this crisis. There's new information that's coming out every day across all sorts of media, as well as from the university and the college. And I know you're getting a lot of emails and a lot of communications, and it's hard to keep up with all of that. But I urge you to try to do your best to keep updated, not just on the epidemic itself, but also the communications that are coming from the university and from the College of Pharmacy. I know that your course coordinators are or will be in touch with you as we move closer towards starting up again. And please stay in touch with them. Stay in touch with the faculty that are your Flames advisors and the other members of your Flames group, and stay in contact with each other and try to support each other. Again, this is a stressful situation, and many of us, react to stress in different ways. There are resources on campus, and we have each other to also get strength from. So please think about each other and communicate as much as possible. I know that you have a lot of questions. I'm sure that you also understand that we don't necessarily have all of the answers to those questions. And even if we did think we know the answer now, by tomorrow things will have changed and it might be a totally different answer and a whole new set of questions. So really all we can do is, based on what we know currently, try to answer questions and plan for the future as best we can, knowing that things are going to change. So that's another reason why it's important to stay informed and up to date, to also keep abreast of the evidence, to try to make evidence-based decisions and to maintain that understanding and respect for each other as we work together in this situation. Another thing I think I need to just highlight, I'd be remiss not to, is not to underestimate the seriousness of the situation in terms of your health and public health. I know that you've gotten a lot of information about this, and hopefully know all the precautions, hygiene precautions to take to keep yourself safe and to avoid contracting this illness. There's been, media information out there that young people in your age group are less at risk for the disease, or if you get the disease, it might not be quite as serious. But there's also evidence that came out today from the CDC that counters some of that and suggests that people in your age group are getting sick and hospitalized, and there are long-term outcomes associated with the disease, even if you survive. So please take it seriously. I think especially people who have underlying respiratory conditions or other comorbid diseases have to be very careful. I also want to make sure that it's clear that how important it is not to spread the disease. That even though you may be at lower risk or may not even have symptoms, that spreading the disease to others who are at risk is to be avoided. And that's why we have so many closures of schools, restrictions on travel, and now even shelter-in-place warnings throughout the country. And likely we will see those here as well. I think Oak Park is already under a shelter-in-place warning. So again, there's the hygiene precautions that are recommended by the CDC, and I know that you're all aware of those. And much of what I'm talking about here in terms of spreading the disease is largely the rationale behind closing of this university and others across the world. So let me just launch into some of the updates related to your academic program. So first of all, you're aware that we've moved our lectures to online, and that we extended spring break by a week, and we're just finishing the first week. So next week will be spring break, and then we'll resume classes on March 30th. Your faculty have been working hard to get up to speed and to be prepared to deliver lectures in the online environment. We are recommending that all of the lecture courses be administered using Blackboard Connect, and that your classes occur at the same time as they are currently scheduled, and that they be synchronous. I mean that they're basically live online. And hopefully you've already received communication about your courses from your course coordinators or will, and also information on how you will participate in these lectures. Obviously there's some technology implications and your ability to connect through Blackboard. We do expect to still have echo recordings available for each lecture, and there may be some courses that are synchronous and others that are asynchronous, meaning that you don't have to participate live. That perhaps it's the echo recordings that you'd watch and then do some other activities, but that is up to your course coordinators. Exams and quizzes will occur in a different format, obviously, because they won't be in person. Some of those will be using ExamSoft. For example, the P1s have all been using ExamSoft in some of the P2 courses. There's also ways to administer exams through Blackboard, take-home exams. And so your course coordinators, again, will be in contact with you about exams as those and quizzes as those come up. We do ask you to be patient with the faculty. This is uncharted territory for them as well as you, and they are doing their best to set up these programs and to make them successful, but there will be hiccups, and you know, we'll just need to communicate those and move forward. So while there has been this extra week of spring break, that has resulted in one less week in the semester because the end date for the semester has not changed. Finals week will be the same week that it was scheduled for. So the faculty are incorporating material that would have been lost in that week into the last few weeks of the semester here. So just so you know, there's no change in the end of the semester or in finals week. And this was done because we know that many of you had plans after the semester, whether you're starting residencies or other programs. And the campus made that decision not to extend the semester. So that kind of covers lectures. Again, we'll try to answer questions that you have here at the end, but the more difficult thing to plan for has been the competency and skill-based labs that you have, many of which require you to be there in person. There's equipment involved, or the facilities, or just because you have to demonstrate that skill. And so the course coordinators involved in those have been working to formulate plans for how to accomplish that. The crisis itself has been changing, you know, and it's necessitated us to change our plans. So once we've developed a plan and then we find out that we can't do that because something new has come up, it's made it very difficult. But in terms of the competency and skill-based labs, some of those will be made optional, some are being delayed to the fall, and there may be still some that we're working on ways to accomplish during this semester. So stay tuned, and your course coordinators will be in touch with you about those. Similarly, the clinical rotations, IPPEs and APPEs, have been very difficult for us to plan for. Again, there's been lots of changes that have happened as we've started this planning effort, and we still don't have a solid decision yet on how we're moving forward with some of these. So Sheila Allen and Allison and Rockford are working on these, and we'll be in communication with you. It's likely that some of the IPPE will be lessened. We are having troubles with some of the sites in terms of APPEs, and we're having to reassign students. We also are dealing with accreditation and want to make sure that the program itself still meets the requirements of the accrediting body, ACPE, and of the state board, so that the P4s, when they graduate, will have met all of those requirements. And so it's very complicated, and I'll ask Sheila in a second to maybe give a little bit more information about IPPEs and APPEs. You know, we are trying to do our best to keep all of you on track academically. We don't want this situation, this crisis, to delay your program. However, there are a lot of things outside of our control. So far, there hasn't been any changes to the accreditation standards, although all of the deans of colleges of pharmacy across the country have been working and trying to get accommodations for that. Anyway, this all has necessitated us kind of re-looking at how we're doing things, finding new ways to do things, to be innovative. And not all the changes, you know, that we'll have to make are ideal or will be optimal. And we don't know exactly what will happen next, you know, next week or the week after. So we are doing our best, and I hope you'll bear with us on these things. You already know that many of the major events on campus have been canceled on and off campus. Those obviously include events of the college itself and also your student organizations. And I know how disappointing that is, especially events that were intended to honor your accomplishments, things like the honors convocation, the graduating class dinner, and most of all, commencement. And I know how painful this has all been for the class of 2020 to see the last 6 weeks of your college career end with these kinds of cancellations and changes to your program. And I'm deeply sorry about that, as are all of the faculty and everyone involved in the university. And I know how difficult that decision must have been for President Killeen to cancel commencement. It is, you know, not a good situation and never easy to make those kinds of decisions. But from a public health standpoint, I think it was the right decision, and it is the decision that most universities across the country have had to make. At this point, we don't know what the options are, you know, for maybe either rescheduling commencement or having something in place of a live event. We're waiting for information from campus about that. And we'll definitely keep the P4 class informed about commencement plans. I do plan to meet with some of the class leaders, 2020 class, to get your input and ideas for that, as I would be willing to meet with any of you. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you, and I've gotten lots of emails from students and tried to respond to those. So I know that there was a number of questions submitted to me in advance, and I have seen on the screen here that there are some coming in. Let me just pause for a second, if I could ask, maybe starting with Sheila, if there's anything else that you want to add about APPEs or IPPEs. If I don't know if you can patch her in or unmute her phone.
I think I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me, Dean Schumock?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I thought what you shared was exactly kind of where we're at with the plan. So I just want to, you know, the IPPEs are really our P1s and our P3 students. And so I just wanted to let you know that there'll be a communication to you and preceptors coming out early next week in regards to the plan for the remaining parts of the semester. So technically next week was your regular scheduled spring break. So we'll make sure that you're in on the communication well and in advance. As Dean Schumock alluded to, there's been a lot of pressure from our sites in regards to not being able to accommodate students right now. So we're taking that into consideration as we plan for the future. And we'll make sure that you have the required IPPE hours within the curriculum to progress to AIPhAs on time is our plan. To my P3s who are worried about their future AIPhA placements, I don't have a crystal ball. And so I ask that you not ask me about changing AIPhA placements at this time because honestly, my full wholehearted and Dr. Shriver's full wholehearted efforts are making sure that our AIPhAs can complete the requirements, our current AIPhAs will complete the requirements that they need to graduate. And I will make sure that you will be able to complete the same, and hopefully everybody would be on time is the plan here. So I ask that you defer from sending me any emails about, how important a Module 1 current pre-preference placement is, or Module 3, because all of these placements are important for all of our students, and we understand that. And then to my P4s, or our P4s, sorry, I take things very personal. You guys all personally belong to me. I feel very strongly about that. Me and Dr. Shiva are working tirelessly to make sure that we get in all the core required rotations, that you make sure that you have the required hours needed in order to graduate according to curricular and accreditation standards. And so we will also be in communication with the P4s about any modifications early next week. For the P4s, we will plan to hold the class meeting as scheduled on 3/27, but we will be using, the plan will be, we'll be using Blackboard Collaborate, both for the class meeting as well as for the NAPLEX review, and there'll be further information coming out on that. I cannot see if there's any questions coming in about the IPPEs and the AIPhAs, but if I can help answer those, please let me know.
Okay. Thanks, Sheila. I think you answered the one question that was there about the P3 AIPhAs. So perhaps, Kristen, if there's anything about the didactic lectures or other academic issues that I didn't cover completely that you want to add to. If not, we can move forward. Kristen Goliak. Okay. Well, Kristen might not be available or might be muted.
Can you hear me, Dean Schumock?
Oh, yes, I can now. There you are.
Hello?
Can you hear us, Kristen? No, I guess Kristen can't hear us, but we can hear her.
Yeah, so just a quick update on the curriculum. I just want to reassure that to the students that the faculty have been working tirelessly last week as well as all of this week. They are currently developing plans on a weekly basis of how they're going to continue with their core and their elective courses. And we are reviewing that information as well, but they are doing their absolute best to get all of the material in the time frame. So thank you for your patience, and continue to look out for communications from your coordinators.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Kristen. I don't know if you can hear us now, but Peter, I'll just continue with the questions that you previously submitted, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. There was a number of questions that Peter submitted ahead of time, and I see a couple that have come in. I can answer Michael Forrest right away. Will martial law be enacted in Chicago or in Illinois? If so, how does that impact us? Well, that's an interesting question. I do not know that. I would not be surprised. I mean, we have Oak Park that's already, it's not martial law, but a shelter-in-place warning. I would not be surprised if that expands to other places within the state and perhaps the entire state. And how that impacts us, I don't know yet. Because our courses are online, it should not affect a majority of U.S. students, but it might have some impact on. So I believe that most of these shelter-in-place warnings do allow for education and also healthcare related activities to continue. So it depends a little bit on how it's enacted or what exactly is the warning. So I can't answer that completely, but let me just, one of the questions that was submitted in advance was, what's the biggest challenge in handling the COVID-19 crisis at the college level? I'll just quickly answer that one. It's the biggest challenge, I think, for all of us is just the constantly changing nature of the crisis and of the decisions that we need to make as a result of it. The assumptions and the parameters, that go into any decision that we make today could change by tomorrow. For example, Michael's question about, what would happen if now we had a shelter-in-place warning. Well, that will change potentially our decisions that we're making today about our program. And so that's a big challenge. It's just the constantly changing nature of the crisis and all of the input that we need to make decisions, and how our decisions will have to change as the crisis changes. I think another challenge is communication. Forums like this are great for us to be able to get the information out that we need to, but making sure that everybody's informed, getting that information out in a timely manner, and then also getting feedback and input back so that we can use that to make decisions is challenging when you're going through a situation like this. And then lastly, I think managing expectations would be the third final thing I might mention is a part of this challenge is just that all of us have varying levels of understanding about the situation, and we react based on our understanding, and not always is again our understanding necessarily the same across different groups or individuals, and so that requires a lot of work to make sure everybody's on the same page. And there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I can't tell you how many meetings happen every day on campus, meetings at the campus level within the college. Everybody is meeting constantly to understand the current situation and then to work on plans and implement things to allow us to be able to move forward. So let me move to the second question. That was how decisions were made about things like spring break and transition to online classes and so forth. I hope that you all know that the university is a huge organization. We have 3 campuses, main campuses, Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, and Springfield. And there's a system level leadership office with the president and vice presidents that make decisions for the whole system. And then there are also decisions made at the campus levels. So for example, UIC, and then of course at the college level. A lot of the decisions that we're talking about today and that are in this question were made at the system level. So for example, the decision to transition to online, that was made at the system level. And these decisions at the system level, while they're, partly made by the president, there's input from the chancellors and other administrators. The board of trustees is also involved in these decisions and may actually have to approve them. And I know that even the governor's office and the governor himself are involved in these decisions and are often either giving advice on what they feel the university should do or actually approving these decisions. And I think the University of Illinois the reason for that is, well, first that we're a state university, but more so because we are the flagship university system in the state, and all of the other universities in the state follow our lead on these kinds of things. And so they look to the University of Illinois to kind of lead with these things. So that's at the system level, but then there are some decisions made at the campus level. For example, the extra week of spring break was a UIC decision. That same decision was made at the University of Illinois at Springfield, our sister campus in Springfield, but not at Champaign-Urbana. Champaign-Urbana just had the 1 week. And that was partly because of the timing of spring break. The Champaign-Urbana spring break is this week, whereas ours was scheduled for next week. And the timing affected both Chicago and Springfield in terms of the addition of this extra week. But again, that decision was made at the campus level by the chancellor in consultation with the provost and vice chancellor for health affairs, which is the person I report to. And for input, we were consulted. The deans of the colleges were consulted and were able to provide input, but the decision is really a campus one. And then, of course, there are decisions made at the college level, very specific about our program, what we're doing, how we implement the decisions made at the higher level. For example, how do we teach our classes online? What do we do with competency-based skills labs? What do we do with IPPE and APP? Those are obviously done at the college level, and those decisions are made by the leadership of the college, myself, Kevin Wren from Rockford, and the associate deans, department heads, and lots of other people who have expertise in the various areas. There's also an executive committee that gives me advice that's made up of selected faculty. I get a lot of input from other colleges of pharmacy, so I'm part of a group of deans that meets regularly that are Big Ten schools. And there's also another group of the top 25 schools of pharmacy that we're part of. And there's just emails constantly from those groups with information about what each school is doing, how they're handling different situations. And we use that information to inform what we do here. So I can tell you that what we're doing here is very much in line with all of the other top schools in the country. Every state's a little bit different in terms of how this thing has rolled out, and every university makes slightly different decisions and timing. But from a college of pharmacy standpoint, we're very much in line. So let me move to the next question. Could you tell us why the school preemptively decided to change to online courses, given the majority of students are a low risk? So I'm hoping that this has already been answered or is clear. Maybe when the question was written, it wasn't as much, but the fact that people in your age group may be less at risk, and that's not even necessarily known for sure. The issue really is more about the spread of the disease and the fact that you may catch the disease, you might not even know you have it, and you will pass it on to other people. So there's other people in your classes who may be at risk because they have other diseases, and so holding in-person classes would be risky for not only for yourself but others in your class who may be at higher risk than you. And of course, then you take that home with you, expose others, whether it's parents or grandparents. And of course, there's plenty of recommendations from the CDC, the World Health Organization, that you should not be having large gatherings of people. And so, holding classes in person would be in violation of all of the recommendations of public health organizations and common sense, really. So the decision to go online was a reasonable one, and if anything, maybe was made later than it should have been. There's many schools that went to that sooner than we did. So hopefully I answered that question. The next question was, will this affect graduation for the current P4s? And I think we've already attempted to answer that as well. We don't know, what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks, but we're doing everything humanly possible to ensure that our P4s complete the requirements for accreditation and are able to graduate. The requirements for accreditation are slightly different than what we would normally require in terms of the number of hours of AIPhA, and there are requirements about the types of rotations that you need to do. And so again, we're working to ensure that all of our students meet the minimum number of hours that's required by AIPhA and by the state board, and also have completed the core requirements. And we also are working to try to get the AIPhA to amend their requirements slightly, and that's an effort across all colleges of pharmacy. But again, it's a very complicated situation. So yes, we're doing everything possible to make sure that our P4s graduate on time. And then the last question was about the final exam schedule and will it be postponed? And I think I answered that already. We are not changing the schedule for the rest of the semester. So we just basically lose that 1 week and we continue the semester as scheduled. So that's all the questions that were submitted in advance. Peter, I know there was questions submitted online. I have those in front of me. Do you want me to just go ahead and try to answer some of those?
Sure, yeah. Actually, I do have a question from the audience that I think it's like pretty worth answering. So what can students do to stay in touch with the college while these changes and decisions have been made? Is there any way we can be involved in these processes coming from a student perspective?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, in terms of staying informed, we kind of already talked about that. There's we set up a website on the college website, the main page. It's like UIC Pharmacy COVID. So we've been posting everything there, all of the updates there, as well as you're getting frequent emails. So staying informed is the first thing. Many of the decisions that are made at the campus and university level are not ones that that we have a whole lot of input into. So while it would be nice that that we did and that we could get your input to help inform those things, like going online, like adding the extra week of spring break, the decision about when the semester ends, canceling of commencement, all of those things are decisions made at a higher level. The decisions made within the college are also restrained in a lot of ways to issues of accreditation, the facility itself, the preceptors, and what's going on in the University of Illinois health system. So we have a lot of constraints, and we're trying to get as much input as we can as we make those decisions. I certainly welcome student input. I did have a call with the Pharmacy Student Council, but I would appreciate input from students as well. So I guess I can work with the Student Council to see how we, if there's a mechanism for us to get that kind of input. I think as the semester starts back up on the 30th, it'll be easier at that point because over spring break it's been mostly just a whirlwind of changes and decisions having to be made very quickly. That really doesn't allow for a lot of input. So that may not be the answer you wanted to hear, but I'll do my best to work with you to get input as we can and try to inform these decisions with student voice. You want me to move on to some of the other questions?
Sure, yeah. I think you also answered like some of the question that's on there already, you know,
It
about
looks
the
like I
question.
did, yeah. So I'm just kind of moving down. Is the main UIC campus, does it extend the semester by a week? No, I already answered that question. It's not being extended. And the last question, will online classes continue in the fall? Just like Sheila mentioned, we're really focused on the here and now and getting through this current semester and keeping you on track. We don't know what's going to happen in the fall. I mean, there's predictions that this pandemic could last through the summer and maybe even start up again in the fall. It has a lot to do with these social distancing efforts and other efforts to slow down the progression and the spread. But some of those efforts will also prolong the pandemic, because as you slow down that spread and keep have fewer people infected, it just there's evidence that that might prolong the pandemic. And the advantage of prolonging it is that you give time for your healthcare facilities to react, and also don't have if you have too many patients in the hospital at one time, you overload that system and you're not able to care for all of those patients adequately. And by spreading out the epidemic, you have fewer patients at a time in the hospital, and that the hospitals then can handle that. And as you may have heard in the media, there's a shortage of ventilators and a lot of equipment. Testing, of course, has been behind. And just generally, we don't have the capacity in our hospitals to handle all of the patients that could come in if we didn't take a lot of these measures. But again, those measures might spread this out so that it lasts longer. And it's possible it would go into the fall. But we don't know that yet. And so I can't really answer the question about online classes in the fall at this point. Other questions? If any of the other associate deans or faculty that are on the line have anything they want for input, feel free.
Dean Schumock, this is Sheila. Do you mind if I just say something in response to Peter's question about the students?
Sure.
And what they would do? So,
Yeah.
Peter, I would say that when it comes to, what the students can do at this point, I think that one thing is trust us. Trust us that we have your best interests at heart, and that we will do what we need to do in order to make this the best semester left as possible. And we will all look back at this as a challenging experience, but we'll come out of it better than ever. Also, keep in mind, if you have, like Dean Schumock shared, if you have ideas of a way we might be able to do something differently, or technology that you heard that others are utilizing that we might want to be able to consider. I mean, obviously realize there's cost prohibitive things related to this, but that doesn't mean that, you guys have good ideas. And we're willing to and be open to those ideas. I would also say be patient. And I know that it's a hard thing to ask, and it's hard for all of us to actually, even when in our own planning, to be that way. But as we go online for everything, there's going to be hiccups, and we know that, and we will keep that in mind as we make plans out. But be patient with us, and we will be patient with you. In turn, we're going to trust you with a lot because of everything going online. So as much as we're asking you to trust us, we're going to be putting some trust in with you to keep, academic integrity still as we move forward into an online platform. And I've no doubt that that's not even going to be a question, because I know that we can trust you. And then I think that's and support each other, I guess, is the last message I would want to send. So as much as we're going to ask you to support us, support each other too. And, keep in touch with each other, because I think that's going to be more difficult as we're requested to do social distancing. for me, as extreme extrovert, this is extremely hard. But at the same time, it might be different for somebody else with a different personality type, and we might have to make the extra effort to reach out to them. So let's all stay in touch and keep together and get together with this as a community.
Thank you, Sheila. Those are all great points. There was a question from Tony about recommendations to help in the healthcare efforts as students. I think how can you help the healthcare system, I think, in working through this crisis? And I think that's a great question, Tony. There have been calls for volunteers all over. I know on campus here, the University Health Service, that treats students as well as employees, has been asking for volunteers. They need people to screen on the phone to help screen all the calls that they're getting. And a lot of those calls are either employees or faculty or students who might have symptoms and are asking for advice or trying to be referred for testing or for care. And so they're looking for volunteers. But there are, I think, opportunities like that all over all of the major health systems. Pharmacies, I know, are also looking for that kind of help. So, as you can imagine, the healthcare system has to continue in order to treat all of the additional patients that will be coming for care because of this pandemic. And as some of those healthcare workers themselves have to be in quarantine or may actually contract the virus and be unable to come to work, there's a shortage of healthcare workers. And so I know anecdotally, I've heard that many of our alumni who own pharmacies or work in pharmacies are looking for extra help and would be, I think, happy to hear from students. Make sure that as if you do volunteer for those situations, make sure that you do follow all the precautions and so forth yourself to stay safe. But I think a lot of the opportunities for volunteering could also be done remotely via the phone. For example, the student health service or university health service opportunity is like that. So thanks for that question.
Any other question? Any final thoughts on the audience? Well, if you guys don't, feel free to reach out to us too again, because this is going to be a continuous series. So we will have more guest speakers coming in, and if you guys have more questions, feel free to ask us by then. If we don't have any questions, thank you so much, Dr. Dean Schumock and Dr. Allen and Dr. Golia, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And let's give it another round of applause, virtual round of applause.
Peter, thank you for setting this up. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I had intended to do a student town hall like this. I plan to do more of these. And so whether it's through this series that you've organized or, we can do it separately as well. I don't want to hone in on what you're doing, but I will be having these maybe every other week or so. It depends on how things change over time. But I do want to keep you informed and also get your input, like we said. So feel free to contact me. I'd also, I'll follow up with Peter and others to get the student council to also be, so that we have a more regular way to get input. But again, thanks for setting this up, Peter, and all of the groups that were involved in this.
Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of touch on what we're going to do next week. So for next week on Wednesday, that's March 25th, at the same time, so 12:30, we have Stephanie Chan, who is a clinical pharmacist at Northwestern Hunley Hospital, who specializes in infectious disease. She'll provide a general overview of COVID-19 and some current treatments, including the remdesivir, the NIH clinical trial. Also, because this is the first podcast in our series, we ask you guys to kindly fill out the 1 to 2 minutes post survey so we can make this series better, which I'll be posting right now. So thank you guys for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Dean Schumock, and thank you all.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thanks.